Hello folks, I'm John Myrie and welcome to the Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. On this week's show, we have tips and reports for you from Ken Milender down at Hayward Bait and Bottle. And then we talk spring fishing with Hayward Area Fishing Guide Jim Leahy. Lots to cover on this week's show, all coming up right after these messages.
You want to get outdoors, you want to have some fun.
At Hayward Power Sports, we know it's fun to roam the boat shows. But remember, we have awesome deals every day and we'll be here long after the shows. As the 2025s continue to roll in, we're making insane deals on remaining 2024 models. Save nearly $22,000 on a 2024 Lund 1875 crossover. Or how about $19,000 in savings on a remaining 22-foot Bennington pontoon? Hayward Power Sports has a huge selection of new Lund and Tracker fishing boats. Plus, we have our largest selection ever on pontoons in stock with gorgeous Benningtons and the #1 selling pontoon in the world, Sun Tracker. Hayward Power Sports also carries every major outboard with Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Mercury with the best warranty offers of the year going on now. And while the boat shows find you the best financing for the dealer, we work with our banks to get the best financing for you. Our boat show is continuous, so come see us today at Hayward Power Sports, just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77 or at haywardpowersports.com.
The Hayward Lakes Visitors and Convention Bureau in Sawyer County, Wisconsin welcomes you to our Northwoods hometown. No matter the season, no matter the activity, you'll always be surrounded by our great outdoors. What more could you ask for in a vacation destination? Woods, waters, world-class events. Contact us for information on lodging, dining, attractions, events, trail conditions, and more. Order your free vacation guide and start planning your getaway today. Visit us at haywardlakes.com or call 1-800-724-2992.
Riding along in my automobile.
Bumping into things unexpectedly? Make your first choice for collision repair. Ernie's Auto Body, featuring the most advanced collision repair facility in Northwest Wisconsin. With a state-of-the-art spray, bake down, draft paint booth for that better-than-new finish, laser technology for precision frame alignment, loaner cars available, computerized estimates, written guarantees, and documented unmatched customer service, the clear choice is Ernie's Auto Body, south of Hayward on Highway 63 and Nursery Road, where quality is no accident.
Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering welcomes you to stop by for their great lunch menu. And while you're there, Lynn's also has a great selection of custom cut meats and sausages, as well as many varieties of snack sticks, jerky, fresh cheese curds, and much more. Lynn's is open Mondays through Fridays from 9 to 5:30 and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. Lynn's Custom Meats and Catering in Hayward.
Today, anglers fish longer. Today, anglers fish harder. Today, anglers rely more than ever on their electronics. It all comes down to catching more fish, and today, anglers rely on Amped Outdoors lithium batteries, period. Visit ampedoutdoors.com today to power your outdoor experience.
We're recording down at Hayward Bait and Bottle again, talking to Ken Milender. And Ken, good to have you on the show here.
Yeah, thanks for stopping in, John.
You know, we've got the open water going on right now. As we're recording this, we're closing in quick down to the fishing season, the open game fish season. But there are people out getting out fishing right now because there is some good fishing out there.
Yeah, if it's nice out, the anglers are getting out on the water, and a lot of people are buying fatheads and crappie minnows right now.
Yeah, you know, panfish season is open year-round, as is, the fishing, catch and release for bass, too, and we've got trout fishing. But the pan fishing, that's the big thing people go out after early, and, the action's been pretty good, I guess. It's some a little bit deeper, but some of it's coming up shallow, I guess.
Yeah, the panfish has been really, really good all winter, and, and the spring has been really good, too, and, they make really good table fare. And most of the panfish are staging, up in the bays and, getting ready to spawn.
What's been going on as far as bait? Has it been a lot of minnow bite going, or is they getting some on plastic? 'Cause I've been hearing both.
Well, most of the crappies, they'll start on a minnow bite here shortly if they ain't already. So crappie minnows and, minnow imitating plastics work well, too.
I haven't heard much on bluegills. Have you heard anything there?
There's a few guys catching some nice ones. Some of them are up in the weeds, where they were a lot of times during the winter. But most of the perch, they're up on that hard bottom. They should be almost done spawning, so you can still find them in that hard bottom areas, next to the rock areas, out of the main lake. They still should be there before they transition out to the main lake.
Well, perch you had mentioned perch, and that's always good right around ice out because they're one of the first ones, if not the first one to spawn.
Yeah, up in the Lake of the Woods, they'd actually spawn when the ice was still in the lake in March, and you'd get some really big ones that you could never find any other time of the year.
Yeah, it seems like some lakes grow big ones and some don't, but then we have lakes up here in northern Wisconsin that had big perch. They don't seem to be producing those big ones anymore. I think that's a harvest issue.
It could be. It seems like they survive off the insect life, out of the muck bottom, and so if that's not really strong, they just run out of food, to get to that, 14-inch, 15-inch perch.
Yeah, and they're real critical on their spawning areas. I remember when I first moved up here, I know Moose Lake, because of drawdown, there's no shallow weeds in that lake when they bring the lake up right away because everything dries up and blows away. And the DNR was actually putting artificial weed beds out there hoping to get the perch to spawn. But, the perch did it on their own, basically. They started growing a lot of wild rice up in the river, and all that rice straw, it worked perfect for them to spawn in.
Yeah, well, rice, in the fall, they have a rice worm that hatches out in there, and it seems like every little panfish or little fish goes to those areas, once the rice turns brown, and, they'll feed on them.
Yeah, and I figured that out when I seen a huge school of young of the year perch swimming in front of the boat. Basically, I got close enough I could see the little markings on the side of them. And I knew they're perch. So, but anyway, that's some of the things going on. River fishing. I know some people are making some trips to other places. I've heard it's good. Mississippi River up on Rainy River. It's a good over toward the Fox River.
Yeah, I talked to my dad up in Ward, Minnesota the other day, and there's still ice in the Ward River and still ice out of the main lake. So they had a lot of ice, this last fall or winter.
And around here, the rivers, guys are getting out on the Nemacoggin. I know that's been producing some pretty good trout action for browns.
Yeah, there's a lot of anglers coming in here, buying new baits and doing quite well catching them.
What have you heard has been the best thing? It's been spinners or Rapalas, what?
It's starting to get into the 2 and 3 inch Rapalas right now. There was inline spinners. Inline spinners can work all year. Once you get the next full moon and there's a lot of insect, then the fly anglers will probably outproduce inline spinners, but they'll always, they're opportunists. Whatever swims by them, they'll bite. So, but the smaller Rapalas are working better than the larger ones.
When you start talking trout fishing, a lot of people think naturally it's a fly fishing thing. But, I grew up with my granddad down in southern Minnesota, southeastern Minnesota, and he never fly fished for him. If he had a fly rod, it usually had a piece of crawler hanging on the end of it. That's what I caught him with. But he used to use a yellow lazy Ike, and he caught a ton of trout.
Yeah, that's true. When I spent my childhood in Montana, and we had spring-ridden streams on both ranches that we worked on, that my parents lived on, and inline spinners is all I ever use, with exception, night crawlers when they're under the culverts and they got to get them to come out and play. But I always used them. I caught them all summer long.
Up on the Big Lake, too, I've had quite a few reports. Some of the guides are getting up there just on their own. They're fishing for themselves up here, Hayward area guides. But up on Swamigan Bay and up on Lake Superior, they've been doing really good on cohos and everything else up there. Yeah,
bright jerkbaits have been doing pretty well. There's a couple guys that caught some, hand casts into 3-4 feet of water and catching some nice browns. And the other guys were trolling planer boards, quite a ways out from the boat and at 8 to 10 and catching some cohos.
Yeah, it's not a deep water thing this time of year. You just basically like Rapalas and your shallow running baits will catch fish.
Yeah, they seem to always like the bright colors up there.
And I know the steelhead up on the river, Burl River, you heard anything there?
Yeah, they've been biting there for like 3 weeks, so I don't know what it's going to be like in the next week or two, but with all this cloud cover, rain, we had snow this morning, keeping that water temp down, there still should be some groups, still within the current.
Yeah, and there's other fish in there besides the steelhead, too. I know we didn't mention the bass fishing, but I know you just fished a bass tournament here farther down toward Lake Winnebago, but the bass fishing's open all year long on a catch and release basis everywhere.
Yeah, there's even some pretty good bass in the Nemacoggin.
Yep. And I had people telling me they were out on some of our big lakes already catching some smallmouth.
Yeah, a gentleman just showed me photographs this morning. He was catching some 4 or 5 pounders, north of here, about 45 minutes.
Let's talk about the shop here. You guys are geared up and ready to go for spring. A lot of interesting stuff in here and a total reorganization of stuff. Now you've got everything. We mentioned it before on the shows, but if you were a troller for walleyes, everything's going to be in one area pretty much. If you're bass fisherman, you're in a fish, everything's kind of congregated so you're not kind of wandering all over.
Yeah, we try to spread things out a little bit based upon technique. For instance, all our lead head jigs are on one area of the store. All our plastics are in one area. We have the K-Linge product that's pretty much in one area, and all the crankbaits down a wall and a half, and all the planer board stuff is in one section. So it makes it a little nicer shopping for techniques for seasonal angling.
Always some new stuff, too, and it keeps coming every year. It's amazing how they keep coming. Some of it's just a redo of something that was old and modified and a little bit different, but always new stuff.
Yeah, every manufacturer adds new products every year, and we try to expand upon that, because there's a marketing behind that, and, and it's showing the anglers, different techniques, so we try to have all the different products available.
And lastly, I know you guys got information. You're a good source of information for people coming to the Hayward area, Hayward Lakes area, want information on lakes, and maybe a couple tips. You guys will help them out there.
Yeah, we have a pretty knowledgeable staff across the board, from trout right to muskie. Don't be afraid to ask anyone for assistance for anywhere in the store or areas to go fish for, that pattern for that time of year.
Well, Ken, I want to thank you greatly for taking the time with our listeners here.
All right, thank you, John.
Well, folks, we need to take a break right now and hear from some of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll be talking to Hayward Area Fishing Guide Jim Leahy, so stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop for the Hayward area's largest selection of rods, reels, lures, fishing electronics, boating supplies, and much more. Whether you fish for bass, walleyes, panfish, or muskies, gear up for the upcoming fishing season, and if you're getting ready for the spring turkey season too, they also have just about everything you'll need for a successful season. In the bottle shop, you'll find a full selection of beer and liquor. Hayward Bait and Bottle is your one-stop sport and bottle shop. There's no time like the present to explore Hayward, Wisconsin, one of the Midwest's most popular vacation destinations. With crystal clear lakes for water sports and fishing, miles of trails for riding snowmobiles, ATVs, cross-country skiing, hiking, and mountain biking, this area is buzzing with activity year-round. Combined with charming local shops and a variety of Northwoods dining options, Hayward is certain to offer both adventure and relaxation for everyone. Plan your trip today and find everything you need on the Hayward Area Chamber of Commerce website. From events and attractions to local dining, shopping, and lodging, visit haywardareachamber.com and start your next adventure now.
Hayward Power Sports has remodeled our service center. This is Service Manager Damon Schrader. Don't worry, we have the same friendly faces with a service team of 16 highly skilled and certified technicians and a parts inventory that's second to none. We're ready to service and repair your BRP and Polaris machines, plus virtually every major outboard on the planet. And remember, it's always a good idea to think ahead and bring your machines early for the next season. See Hayward Power Sports just 10 minutes east of Hayward on Highway 77 or call 715-462-3674.
Welcome back to another segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors, and this part of the show is brought to you by the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau. For more information on lodging and vacationing here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out their website at haywardlakes.com. Well, folks, one of the guides I get on here whenever I can is Hayward Area Fishing Guide Jim Leahy. Had a chance to talk to Jim the other night on the phone about spring fishing and a lot more. Jim, we're talking about spring fishing a little bit. We're getting to where we're not that far away as we're talking here, and by the time this airs, it will be just a few days away from the opener of fishing season. Getting out there early, a lot of people are kind of fixed with it. They just jig and a minnow, and that's all they fish with, but there's a whole bunch of things that we could try different to catch some fish, isn't there?
Oh, yeah, there are. The jig and the minnow arguably is probably the very best method, but if the conditions are right, I like doing things I like, throwing crankbaits but again, it's all based on the conditions. If you have those conditions, that's great. If you have just bluebird, then it's back to that jig and the minnow or a slip bobber and a lively minnow.
Where are you going to start? I mean, the big thing is everybody wants it. They call it the walleye opener. I mean, it's a fishing opener, but a lot of people go out after the walleyes right away in the season. What do you tell people to start, where to start looking for them?
Well, every year is different with that, with the water temperatures. Last year with the ice going out in February, the opening day was, equivalent to fishing in June looking for fresh weeds. So this year we're not going to have that. It's pretty much, if you want to call it a traditional or normal opener, the fish should be finishing up with their spawning. And, I think it'll probably be a shallow bite. And when you get that shallow bite, if you have the right conditions, the wind and rain and low light can either be a lot of cloud cover, which goes along with that rain, or, early morning or night fishing, dusk and, even after dusk. And that's when I like to throw the crankbaits, and, you're targeting fish, and, if you're on a flowage 3 to 6 feet, the same method can be used on a clear water lake. What was considered shallow on a flowage might be 3 to 6 feet, whereas on one of our clear water lakes, that shallow bite is more likely, 6 to 10 feet. And so you would obviously use some different baits to get down into that depth a little bit. But I always like to, fish about half of run those crankbaits so they're about, half to 3/4 of the depth. So if you're fishing, targeting 3 to 5 foot of water, you don't want to throw a crankbait that goes out there that's going to be, bouncing the bottom on the triple flowage, because you're going to get, snags or Nelson Lake or moose or any of the other lakes. So you want to have something that is either neutral, like a husky jerk, where you can control that depth a little bit, or, my favorite is actually number 11 or 13 floating Rapala. 13, a lot of people think that's too big, but it's not. You want that bigger profile, and you can throw the baits longer with a bigger, because those baits are light in the first place.
You're looking at a straight retrieve or a stop go or a twitching type thing, because I've noticed a lot of times they want just a steady, slow retrieve, but then other times it's different. You just kind of got to feel it out and see what the fish want, or what?
Yeah, well, on a floating Rapala, like a size 11 or a size 13 floating Rapala, steady retrieve is best, because if you hesitate on those, then they start to rise up. Now, if you think you're going a little bit deeper, let it raise up a little bit and then start your retrieve again. But if you're looking to be in the fish's face when you're twitching like that, I think a husky jerk is a better choice for that, because it's neutral and it stays right into that fish strike zone. But you're right. I prefer a steady slow on the floating Rapalas anyway, or baits that are like the Rapalas. And with that, typically to get that, you keep your rod tip low, throw your bait out there as long as you can, keep that rod tip low, and start your retrieve fast to get the depth that you need, and then you can slow it down once you've accomplished what you want, which is, if you're in 6 foot of water, you want that bait to go about 3.5 feet if you can get it, because these fish that are in that shallow water, they're not laying right on the bottom. They're actually feeding. So they're a foot or so off the bottom, maybe 2 feet even, looking for bait fish. So, crankbaiting is all experimenting. It's experimenting with colors, sizes of the baits. Like I like to use the bigger ones simply so I can get that distance on the cast, which, you can accomplish with, I like a 7 foot rod, or longer for crankbaiting, just so I can get that distance, and a smaller diameter line, like a 6 or 8, braid works good, but then you need a fluorocarbon, leader. You can use mono for that as well, but I think the braid is a better option. And then the fluorocarbon isn't really to fool them on the visibility, but it's more to fend off the other fish that you're going to get, because when you're crankbaiting for walleyes around here, on most of our lakes, it's 5-1 northern pike to walleye and or largemouth bass or even smallies. So if you want to keep those $12 baits, $10 baits or whatever they run, that fluorocarbon, I don't like to go too heavy on it. About 12 pound is just about right. I think some guys go a little bit higher, and that's just to save your baits, because that fluorocarbon is really tough. And if you just are using standard monofilament, and a northern comes from the side and T-bones it, or a bigger northern or a muskie or whatever, you're gonna have some cutoffs, and that's not good. Another thing that can be very effective for finding fish is straight line trolling with crankbaits this time of the year, and try to stay in that 6-foot water. And if you can find some fish doing that, then if it's a small area, go back there with your a weedless jig or a slip bobber, and half the problem or challenge, I should say, with walleye fishing is finding them, and that's a good way to find them.
Well, we talk about finding the best with the green weeds too, but not all the weeds are going to hold the fish. It's a temperature thing. It's a wind thing, has a big factor with it. But then once you do find them, you get in those weeds, or around those weeds, you can catch those fish.
Yeah. My dad and I were using crankbaits literally, 50 years ago around Hayward for walleyes, and he was using them before that even. And he was black and silver. That's all. His whole tackle box was black and silver Rapalas. They're a great Rapala, but I've experimented a lot since then, and I still keep those black and silvers in my tackle box. But one of the best colors on some of these dark stained lakes are gold and black and orange, and the orange and gold, the Rapalas, and those are baits that a lot of the local bait stores carry, but you can't get those at the Walmarts and things like that. They're limited on colors, and that's one of the reasons that the local bait stores have colors, and sometimes that are just not available at other places. And that's that golden orange is a really good color. It looks kind of hideous, but the way that it gathers light, it attracts fish, and the northerns do jump all over them. So that's where that fluorocarbon leader is going to pay its rent for you, save those baits from getting bit off.
Well, folks, we need to take yet another break and hear from even more of the fine sponsors that make this show possible every week. When we come back, we'll have the second part of that talk we had with fishing guide Jim Leahy. So stay tuned. We'll be back right after these messages. Hey folks, come on over to Hayward Ace Hardware and check out the area's largest selection of firearms, ammo, and accessories. We carry top brands like Browning and Sig Sauer, and we have a great selection of the newest and hard-to-find models. We've got a large selection of ammo with more coming in daily. If you need a scope, we carry great brands like Leupold, Hawk, and EOTech, and we'll even mount it and bore-sight it for you too. We even sell suppressors and silencers. And don't forget to check out our Guns of the Week. Huge discounts on a variety of pistols, rifles, and shotguns that change every week. So stop on in to Hayward Ace Hardware, your firearms superstore. Hayward Ace Hardware, Highway 63 North in Hayward, or give us a call at 715-634-8700.
Hayward Animal Hospital is a full-service medical and surgical hospital featuring on-site laboratory, digital and dental x-ray, in-house pharmacy, and online store. Dr. Ostrander has 40 years of experience dealing with illnesses, injuries, surgery, and dentistry. Hayward Animal Hospital offers urgent care appointments and emergency surgery daily. Please call early in the day for these appointments. They open at 8 a.m. Hayward Animal Hospital is located 1 mile east of Hayward on Highway B. Call 715-634-8971.
Hey folks, the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach on Highway K between the Big Lakes has groceries, ice, beer, liquor, and pop, and now has all new tackle and bait supplies. All current antiques and household items are now on sale and all must go to make room for the sport shop. That's at the Log Cabin Store in Northwoods Beach between the big lakes.
If you'd like to have your time fishing be more enjoyable and productive, hiring a fishing guide can be a good investment. Whether it's learning more about fish patterns throughout the year, learning how to use your depth finder to find the best spots and fish, learn how to use that GPS to get the most out of it, or learn better boat control. A day on the water with a guide can really help you to be a better angler, as well as make a day on the lake very enjoyable. To book a guide trip this year or get more information, you can find us on the internet at www.wiscnorthlandoutdoors.com, and then just click on Area Guides.
Welcome back to the last segment of this week's Wisconsin Northland Outdoors. And folks, we're going to jump right back into the second part of that talk we had with Jim Leahy.
And you mentioned, slip bobber fishing too. And a lot of people, they fish slip bobbers. They'll fish a jig on it. They'll, or fish just a hook on it. Typically outside the weeds or rock humps and, that type of thing. But slip bobber tactic with a weedless jig on it is actually a good tactic around the weeds and getting actually into the edge of the weeds sometimes.
Oh, yeah. And, there are some hooks out there that you can use without having that weight on it that have a weed guard as well. And those work, sometimes the thing with live bait fishing, it's live bait fishing. And live bait fishing is not, grounding your minnow out there for 45 minutes. With your slip, you throw it out there. You don't get a hit. You want to reposition it anyway, but then check your bait. If your bait's half dead, walleyes will hit that when it's half dead. But if the fish are just kind of in a neutral mood, they may not. So keep your bait live.
They'll hit crawlers pretty much any time, but you got leeches and minnows, and usually we start out with the minnows. When do you look at switching over to the leeches?
When that water's into the solid 50s, typically on a normal year like what we're having this year, a lot of times I haven't done real well opening weekend on leeches, not to say, and probably because I just don't have a lot of confidence and I'm not using them. But if the water's kind of cold, they curl up and you're not getting that live bait, that, presentation that you need. But when that water warms up, and that's typically, mid-May, always before Memorial, like I said, the water's just got to warm up a little bit. And, I prefer the minnows if I'm going to use live bait and for the majority of May, but that latter part of May, I always have leeches with me, and I'll put the nice thing about minnows is if you're slip bobbering, you can kind of combo fish. If the crappies are in that area, you can get some crappies with your slip bobber rigs, whereas with the leeches, you might get a crappie here and there, but the minnows kind of outfish things that way.
Well, Jim, a lot of interesting tips there. You got information to give out as far as guiding. I know you and your boys both guide, so give information on contacts and stuff.
Yeah. I can be reached at 715-558-9719. And then my son Tom, he guides 715-558-6755. I have a website as well, haywardguideservice.com.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, Jim. It's been interesting here and good, useful information for people for the early part of the season.
Well, I appreciate it. And to all you fishermen out there, good luck.
Yep, thanks.
Well, folks, we're about out of time for this week's show. I'd like to remind everyone out there that if you miss a show, go to our website at wnoradio.com. And from there, you can link to our podcast site, and the show is also on Spotify and Google Podcasts every week. And also, if you're looking for information on vacationing and lodging here in the Hayward Lakes area, check out the Hayward Lakes Visitor and Convention Bureau website at haywardlakes.com. Thanks for listening, folks. We're out of time, and we'll be back again next week with another interesting show for you.
Listen with me, I'm gonna take you there to our Wisconsin outdoors, our Wisconsin outdoors.
This program has been produced and hosted entirely by Wisconsin Northland Outdoor Communications.